Hey everybody, thank you for watching this video. I'm going to be presenting this work that I've been writing with my brother, who is a professor at DePaul Law School. He is a professor of criminal law and focuses on policing reform. I'm a professor of business law and ethics at the Kelley School at Indiana University, where my research focuses on marketing, branding, in particular the intersection of branding and the law. And I think that marketing and branding actually has something interesting to say about policing in America. And so what we wanted to do was put together an article, an argument, and some data on what it would mean to think about reforming the police from a business perspective, in particular from a marketing perspective. So, I'm not going to go into so much detail here. It's clear that policing is facing a problem in the United States. All of us sort of at this conference are, part of the conference is figuring out what that problem is and how to solve that problem. So, we don't really need to necessarily go into details of what that problem is. I think we kind of have a sense. So what are we currently doing about it? Well, we wanted to sort of survey, at least in the legal literature, what people are advocating when it comes to police reform. And, we have, police interacting with citizens, whether they're stopping citizens, whether they're pulling them over, whether they're detaining them, what it may be. And we've kind of categorized three things that we think sort of people are talking about in terms of advocating for police reform. The first is improving police training, oversight, and recruitment. I think you guys are quite sort of well versed in this, and I think a lot of the work that other sort of scholars are doing at this conference sort of is talking about that. Another sort of area is curtailing police power. Now, this could be sort of the type of defund the police narrative that is sort of being thrown around. It could also be, things like community policing, right? And sort of getting people to not give police so much power in the sense of, trying to get more healthcare workers, whether they're mental health care workers, to help police interact with citizens. Is also, and this is sort of very legal focused, reforming disciplinary laws, right? There's a lot of arguments that, police are not being held accountable for various reasons. And so we need to sort of shift how we think about holding police accountable, whether that's internally in a police department, or it's at the sort of federal level or state level and talking about the justice system. But what's common about all these three things, and this is the vast majority of sort of work in the space of policing reform, is that they're focused on the police officer. The idea is that what we've been talking about is reforming the police officer. There's something wrong with the officer. There's something wrong with the department. Let's reform it. And we view this as an internal sort of reforms. And what we want to argue is that I think we're missing a part of reform when we're solely focused on these sorts of reforms, these sorts of internal reforms. So what do we mean by we're too narrowly focused? And what are we missing? Well, let's sort of take an example of a corporate example. So here's a cell phone, right? We know what the cell phone is, and we know what a consumer is in terms of the cell phone. It's somebody who uses a cell phone. So we have a product and we have a consumer. The product is the phone, and the consumer is the consumer. The citizen is the consumer. So how would, let's say, Apple, if they were facing a crisis or they wanted to make their product better, what would they do? Well, maybe they would improve the camera, which they do a lot. I don't know if anyone has the new iPhone 14. It's supposed to have an amazing camera. I haven't got it yet. You might improve customer service support. You may be able to call somebody. You don't have to wait sort of on the phone. You can call someone right away and you'll get something. Maybe have longer battery life. There's all these different ways that Apple may improve the phone. The problem is they can improve the phone as much as they want. But if people don't know about those improvements, or if people don't care about those improvements, or if people don't internalize those improvements, then the brand is not changed. So the brand is the customer perceptions of the phone. We can make the phone look awesome, but we also have to figure out how we're going to get consumers to change their perceptions about the phone. So consumers know that the camera is improved. So they know that there's longer battery life. We can do all these things, but if we don't connect it to the consumer, it doesn't mean anything. The brand is still going to be sort of mediocre. So this shows that, and hopefully sort of makes clear, the brand is very important to a company, right? We hire brand managers. You get a PhD. I have a PhD in marketing. Most of my work is on branding. We have academics. We have business school professionals learning about branding. We understand that branding is important. The customer perceptions of the product, in this case, the phone, are important. But what's funny about it is this is sort of ignored in the police context. And what I want to say is the police brand is even more important. So branding should be even more important to police than it is to a corporation. You might say, wait, why is that? Well, let's think about this. What is the police product? So it's very clear what the product is. If I had to draw a circle around what the product is when it comes to a cell phone and someone using a cell phone, you would all do what? Yep, you would draw it around the cell phone. That is the product. So when we want to change the product, we change the product, and then we worry about consumer perceptions of the product. The question is, what is the product with policing? I think often we think the product is police, but that's not the case. The product is police interactions. It's policing. And part of that, part and parcel of that product is consumers. It doesn't make sense to talk about the police product without citizens. In the way it makes sense to talk about the features of a cell phone without the person who's consuming it. But it doesn't make sense to talk about the officer without the interaction the officer has with a citizen. And so if you really think about it, the product is not just officers, it's the officer interaction with citizens. Therefore, the perceptions that citizens have of the officer are critical. They're actually part of the product. They're not add-ons. They're not something that we need to sort of figure out after we figure out the product, reforming the product. It is part of reforming the product. Part of reforming policing is reforming and changing the brand of police. That is sort of intrinsic to changing the police product, changing policing. Okay, so just to recap. So unlike a corporate product, policing cannot stand exogenously from citizen perception. There's an endogeneity there. And the police product is not police, but police interactions with citizens. Therefore, citizen perceptions of the police affect interactions. And there's a fair amount of work that shows this. And hence, they're constituent of the product. And so it only makes sense that we must reform those perceptions in addition to, and at the same time, we are reforming police behavior, the actual police themselves. Okay. So once we sort of laid out that this is why it's important, this is why we need to think about these perceptions, this brand, what we wanted to do was, measure the police brand. And I think our results sort of won't be surprising to you, but I think it's important to sort of go about and use empirical methodology that has been reserved for marketing sort of scholars and apply it to policing. So we have a nationally representative sample where we ask people to rate their perceptions of the police. And here are some of the perceptions. So, we ask, are police trustworthy? Are they intelligent? Are they compassionate? Are they racist? And you might say, well, you know what? That's actually not bad. 50% of the sample agrees that they're trustworthy. That's great. And 55% think that they're intelligent. That's awesome. The problem is policing is unlike a corporate product, in that it's not some consumers or some citizens that matter. All citizens matter, right? So this notion that, well, 50% of people think it's great, so we should be happy. No, that means that at least 50% don't think that police are trustworthy. They don't think maybe that police are intelligent, and they don't think that police are compassionate. But that 50% that's in disagree neutral is a super duper important, it's a super important constituent that we need to care about. It's not just about, well, we're doing a good job because 50% of citizens think we're good. Not quite the contrary, right? I actually think this shows a pretty bad photo that only, or a bad sort of picture, that only 50% of people are sort of trusting of officers. And when we go to racist, then it sort of blows it up. The vast majority of people believe, almost 60% of people believe that, the cops are racist. But then we have these aspects. A lot of people think that the cops are still good, police are still good, and 75% believe they serve an important role. So there's a mismatch here, right? We know that people internalize, hey, majority of people, policing is important. We need to have police. They're serving an important role, and overall they're good. Yet, we don't really trust them. Yet they're not intelligent, and yet they're not compassionate, and yes, they're racist. So something is missing here, and this is exactly what is the brand. These sorts of 4 metrics make up, in some ways, amongst other metrics that we measured, make up the police brand. So I think this picture tells us that the police brand is in trouble. So here's some other sort of interesting results that came from our survey. We asked people what they think about their local police versus police overall. Now, police overall could be sort of police that they encounter in different states when they go outside of their jurisdiction. It could be, a state trooper. It could be maybe federal, thinking about FBI or CIA or, whatever sort of policing. What we find is people vastly, majoritarily, respect and have better sort of perceptions of their local police than they do police overall. That may not be surprising, but that's quite an important takeaway, right? It's not that we need to be convincing local people that, hey, your police are great. No, they're actually doing pretty good in terms of convincing the local citizens, and the brand for local citizens is pretty good. But as soon as that citizen goes to drives through a different neighborhood, now that citizen is worried that, hey, I don't think these police are trustworthy. So this is a way we can sort of segment the market and figure out sort of what kind of sort of branding content we need to be sort of delivering. This will also not surprise you. There's statistically significant differences in terms of race and police perception, right? So those African-American, Black Americans, individuals generally have worse perceptions. The brand is sort of much more tarnished with that demographic than with a white demographic. We also have results in terms of locale, whether it's a city versus a rural. We have demographics on education. And so a lot of these things show really interesting market segmentations where some aspects of one's identity, for whatever that may be, is sort of driving a positive or negative perception. And these are important things to keep in mind when we're crafting a sort of branding campaign around sort of improving citizen perceptions of the police. Okay, so now we've sort of, we started out by saying the brand is important and sort of explaining why it's important. Then we kind of showed, well, it's not good. The brand is sort of in crisis. And so the next question is, well, how do we rebrand? What kinds of things can we be doing? And here what we do is we draw from marketing and branding scholarship and argue there's at least 5 ways to begin to reform the police brand. And of course, there are challenges that, unlike a corporate brand, and the biggest challenge is that the market is everybody, right? If you are, let's say, Ferrari, you aren't worried about the person that's middle class and what they think about your brand. You're not. You're worried about the super duper 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 rich people who are buying your product. So who cares what everyone else thinks? We can't do that in policing, right? Every single person in the police brand matters because every single person is part of the police product. So here are some sort of 5 ways that we brainstorm. So the first is measurement consistency. So what you will hear from a marketer, if you ask a marketing sort of either a scholar or someone who is a practitioner of marketing, they will tell you that data is the most important thing. We need to be consistently measuring how people view our product, how people view our company, and how that changes. We need to be doing the same thing with policing. We need to be constantly measuring how, in a systematic way, how people are, viewing the police, where they're viewing the police, what interactions they're having with the police, and then show, is this changing? What is changing it? What is driving the changes? In order to do this, we must have sort of a systematic way to measure the police brand. And we must have departments or nonprofits, whatever it is, consistently doing that. Right? That's the only way we'll get data. And only with data can we have really good insights on how to improve the police brand. The other thing is market segmentation. And I spoke a little bit about this previously. But the idea is market segmentation allows us to target certain demographics where sort of the brand is in crisis, right? So partly the brand is in crisis with Black Americans. And so segmenting that market and sort of targeting that market is, and it would be an important goal. In addition, the market of non-local police is problematic, is being harmed and hurt more than the local police. So we need to sort of target and send messages and segment the market for non-local police, right? The civilians that are citizens that are interacting with non-local police, we need to be targeting them. Advertising is pretty similar, right? Pretty simple. You don't really see advertisements for police. Now you see some, right? Particularly, in the past year, you've seen some national campaigns, but it's actually quite rare for the police to advertise, whether that's locally or that's at a federal level or at a national level. I think that there could be crafting of advertisements and placing of advertisements in ways that sort of improve the police brand. Word of mouth is something that marketers in the corporate world are really, really, really excited about, right? So what is word of mouth? Word of mouth is, when you get your own customers to market the product. That's the best sort of marketing because people trust other people. We need to do that, right? We need to sort of create incentives, create sort of campaigns where people are sort of that have had good interactions with police, that sort of have positive perceptions of the police, that need to be communicating that to their communities, particularly the communities that have had not particularly positive interactions with police. And then co-branding. So you'll see sometimes co-branding here in the local sense. You'll see a police department sponsor a softball team or have a barbecue with a local sort of nonprofit. And that's great. But there's many more opportunities in co-brand, right? There's co-branding with politicians. You see a lot of right-wing politicians co-branding with the police. Why not left-wing? I mean, we're doing a lot, right? We're doing a lot to reform police. And there could be the case that I think many liberal or so-called democratic politicians would be open to sort of co-branding with the police. I think that would sort of reach a different segment, would reach a different market, and it'd be super important. So what are the benefits of doing this? Well, a branding scholarship, shows that there are many benefits. Everyone thinks it's just sales. It's not just sales that help a company when a company has a good brand. And it's not just that, people are going to think the police are more trustworthy. That's great. But there's actually a lot of other benefits that are going to accrue to the police. So first is loyalty, right? So brand loyalty is a huge aspect. When you like a brand, even if they increase their price, even if they mess up once or twice, you will still go back to that brand because you have loyalty, right? Creating a strong police brand will create loyalty from citizens, right? Even if they have a bad experience, they may still say, you know what, that was a bad experience. I'm loyal to sort of local police. I'm trusting the process of sort of that they are good people. So I'm going to sort of stick with them. Cost savings. So good branding can have huge cost savings for the police, right? A huge cost burden to the police is litigation costs. When people are suing because cops are sort of, police are sort of misbehaving, right? Whether they're, unethically or unlawfully restraining or searching or discriminating, whatever it may be, that's creating a lot of litigation costs. Well, if we sort of work on the police brand, which will then sort of change how people view the police and ideally will create more robust as well as more ethical and so sustainable police interactions, well, we're going to see litigation costs go down. And if litigation costs go down, that's money in police departments sort of pocket that they can use for community policing, they can use for more community outreach, they can use for more education of officers so they know the laws better. There's all these sorts of cost savings that are actually going to be great in the long run. Employee retention and recruitment. So, there's a sense in which people and employees want to work for companies that do good, for companies that have a good brand, for companies that people respect. Employees want to go there. And because they want to go there, those companies can actually pay less. They can pay a decrease. They don't have to pay a premium because they can easily attract employees. It's pretty hard for police departments to attract quality, hardworking, ethical, and legal officers right now because there is sort of a problematic brand, right? Saying you're a police officer carries a lot of positive but also negative connotations right now, and that makes it difficult to sort of recruit top, smart, hardworking officers. But it also makes it difficult to retain those officers, which then creates sort of more costs. Right? Working on the police brand will allow departments, will create the environment so departments can actually recruit and retain really, really good sort of officers, which is what we want. And the last one is resilience. We see a lot in the literature. Companies that have good brands can withstand crises, whether that's a crisis because of a price, whether that's a crisis because the product fails. They can withstand that because they have a strong brand. If we work on the police brand, then when there is, as there inevitably will be, problematic encounters, well, the police brand as a whole and policing as a whole can be more resilient in sort of withstanding those sorts of PR crises if it works on its brand. And so that's sort of what we've been, what we're trying to do. And I just want to say one thing, because I think people may get, not necessarily get the wrong idea, but I don't want us to think that that this sort of rebranding should replace sort of fixing police behavior. That's just wrong. Fixing police behavior, holding them accountable, training them better, giving them the resources they need to be, more ethical, more sort of legal and better police officers is super important. And we're starting to do that, right? You're starting to see sort of police departments really taking this to heart. And we think that's awesome. And we think that needs to continue to happen. But we also need to connect those things to citizens. It's not enough for us to just do those things. We have to connect that to citizens. We have to inform citizens about all the things that we're trying to do with the police. And when we do that, we will improve the police brand. That's the first thing. The second thing I wanted to say is, often when you talk about marketing and you talk about branding, people immediately think deception. That what's going on with marketing is convincing people of something that isn't true. And that's not what we're saying. We're not saying that police departments need to go out there and convince people that policing is great when it's clearly been problematic and it continues to be problematic. That's not what good marketing is. What good marketing is communicating exactly what is going on with the police in an open, transparent way, and communicating it to those exact people that need to hear the message, right? And so if we can get, police departments to sort of communicate, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how we are trying to reform the police. What do you think about this? Oh, you think this? Okay, great. We're going to try that again. Now we're going to survey you again. What do you think about this? We took your feedback. That sort of relationship, that is marketing, right? Marketing isn't just about convincing people X, Y, Z and deceiving people. Marketing is really about being transparent and sort of touting all the great stuff your product does. And that's what we need to do with police. We need to sort of say, listen, yes, we've had problems, and this is what we are doing to solve those problems. And we need to do that in a systematic way in order to improve the police brand, because only then can we improve the police product itself. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time, and I look forward to any comments or questions.